In this next video, we're going to look at the inheritance of multiple traits. So one of the things you can do to calculate the rate of obtaining different traits is using the product law. And so the product law can be used to predict the frequency with which two independent events will occur simultaneously. These could be two different traits. They are typically going to be on two different chromosomes. Their inheritance of these is not linked in any way. So for example, just because you have blood type O doesn't mean you're going to have dimples. And so the example we're going to look at here is pea plants. Just because a pea plant is yellow doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be round or wrinkled. So to calculate the inheritance of these different traits, all you have to do is just multiply the rate of inheritance of the first times the rate of inheritance of the second. So in this example, for the color, 3/4 of them would be expected to be yellow and 1/4 of them would be expected to be green. For the second trait, round versus wrinkled, 3/4 of them would be expected to be round and 1/4 of them would be expected to be wrinkled. So in order to calculate how many are yellow and round, you simply just multiply these two numbers, 3/4 times 3/4, and you end up with 9/16 are going to be yellow and round. In order to calculate how many would be yellow and wrinkled, again, you would just simply multiply those two numbers together. 3/4 chance times 1/4 chance means 3 out of 16 would be yellow and wrinkled, and then so on, the green and round, green and wrinkled. The probability of these two or more events occurring simultaneously is equal to the product of their individual probabilities. So another way to look at this, if you're more of a visual learner, is in the first cross you have a yellow and round pea crossed with a green and wrinkled pea. And the same for this particular cross. You have a yellow and wrinkled times a green and round. And what you would find in the F1 is that all of them would be expected to be yellow and round, because in this case yellow is going to be dominant and round is going to be dominant. So now if you were to cross these two F1s, the yellow round times a yellow round, you would get the results as we had just discussed. Okay, so when you're looking at two or more different traits, the reason why you can do something like using this product law is because the law of independent assortment. And what this states is that alleles of genes that lie on different chromosomes are going to be assort or be inherited independently of one another. If you think back to meiosis, when you have the chromosomes all lining up during metaphase 1, the arrangement of those, which order, which side that they align on, is totally random. So all possible combinations of gametes can form with equal frequency due to this, and joint inheritance of two or more different traits results in progeny whose ratios mirror the laws of probability for these independent events. Okay, so going back to our example, we've got two genes. One is color, yellow or green, and one is type, smooth or wrinkled. Okay, so just as we discussed previously, you can do the product law to try to calculate the different individual probabilities of this. Another thing you can do is you can fill out a larger Punnett square. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Okay, first of all, test yourself. Okay, if you were to do a cross between someone who is dominant for both A trait and B trait, crossed with someone who is recessive for both of these traits, what would you expect the genotype of the F1 offspring to be? And the answer is that these F1 offspring are going to be heterozygous for both traits. And the reason why is because when you're setting up this cross, this parent can donate either a capital A or a capital A. That's not much of a choice. This parent can donate either a lowercase a or a lowercase a. Again, not much of a choice. So you're going to get a capital A from this parent and a lowercase a from this parent, and indeed that's what we see here. And the same exact thing for the B trait. From this parent you can get a capital B or a capital B. From this parent you're going to get a lowercase b or a lowercase b. Again, not much of a choice, and so you get a capital B from this parent and a lowercase b from this parent. And so 100% of the offspring, the F1 offspring, are going to be heterozygous for both traits. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit more complicated. thinking back to how we set up a Punnett square, in this case, when you're setting up a Punnett square for the F2 generation, you're going to be looking at the heterozygote times the heterozygote. How do you think that you would set up the Punnett square? Okay. So I'm going to give you a little hint here. The Punnett square should look something like this, at least have this many squares on it. And then what you can see is this is the different combinations of alleles that you might expect from each of these parents. So if you look on the left, okay, you can get a capital A and a capital B is one possible choice, a capital A and a lowercase b, another possible combination of gametes, lowercase a, capital B, another possible combination, lowercase a, lowercase b. Again, another possible combination of gametes. The other parent, the same exact combination of gametes. Okay, so now go ahead and fill in the Punnett square. Okay, so in this first square, all you do is you basically fill in the square with both of these traits. And you always keep the A's together, the first trait together, you're always going to keep the B's or the second trait together. The other convention is that you're always going to write the capital letter of the pair first. So in this case, it doesn't matter, you've got capital A, capital A, capital B, capital B. Okay? In this case, okay, capital A, capital B, lowercase b. Here's another example, capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b. And you can write them, you can't technically write them in either order, however, it's going to be much, much easier for you when you're going back, you're looking at these different combination of traits, if you write it so that the capital letter of the pair is first. And what you can see is I've highlighted in some different colors here the different combinations you would expect to get from this particular cross. And if you count them up, you would see that 9 out of 16 of them are going to have at least one capital A and at least one capital B, meaning that they're going to be dominant for both traits. You can see in green here, 3 out of the 16 are going to have 2 lowercase a's, so they're going to be recessive for A, and at least one capital B, so they're going to be dominant for B trait. 3 of them out of 16 are going to be dominant for A, they're going to have at least one capital A, but they're going to be recessive for B, they have 2 lowercase b's. And then 1 out of the 16 is going to be recessive for both traits. They have both lowercase a's as well as lowercase b's. Now, if you had trouble setting up the 2-trait Punnett square, I recommend that you go back to some of the Chapter 11 notes and you look at how to set up the dihybrid cross. Following that, you can set up any number of different traits, and we'll start with the trihybrid cross. And what you're looking at here is the inheritance of 3 traits. So once you know how to do 2, really you can do 3, 4, 5, 100 different traits. You're really just going to be following the same sort of principle. So in this first particular cross, these parents, you're looking at traits A, B, and C. This particular parent is going to be dominant for all 3 traits. This particular parent is going to be recessive for all 3 of these traits. So the possible gametes that they can produce, this parent, only choices really is going to be capital A, capital B, and capital C. So you can see that here. This parent, the only particular gamete that it can produce is a lowercase a, lowercase b, and lowercase c. So the F1, very easy. All you do is combine these 2, and what you can see is they're going to be a heterozygous for all 3 of these traits. Capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b, capital C, lowercase c. Now, the difficult part comes into when you're trying to figure out what potential gametes that this particular cross can produce. One of the best ways to set it up or to think about this is to again go back to the product law. So in this case, the potential offspring can get either a capital A or a lowercase a. Because this is a single trait cross, we know it has just a regular inheritance characteristics, meaning dominant recessive. we know that 3/4 of them are going to show the dominant phenotype, and 1/4 of them are going to have the lowercase a from this. For the capital B or lowercase b, 3/4 of them are going to have at least one capital B, 1/4 of them are going to have a lowercase b. Same thing here. For the C, 3/4 of them are going to have a capital C, at least one capital C, excuse me, and 1/4 of them are going to have two lowercase c's. So when you do the math, you can set up this sort of forked diagram, and you can really do any number of traits that you would like at once. You could imagine a D, an E, and so on through here. So when you're trying to figure out the combined proportion, again, all you simply need to do is just multiply these numbers. And what you can see is the potential ratio of offspring of the different gametes that are possible. So one of the reasons this is important is we start to look at things like polygenic inheritance. And so sometimes traits are controlled by multiple genes. And these results tend to be additive. And so this happens a lot of characteristics that we think about are not going to be controlled by single traits. Okay? Sometimes these traits also can be affected by the environment. And the result of this is going to be this continuous variation of phenotypes within a population. So a good example is human skin color. Humans have a whole variety of different skin colors. Height, people aren't exactly 5 foot, and then some people are 5'5", and then some people are 5'10". There's no gradation like that. People fit more of this bell curve. Eye color, there are a whole bunch of different eye color traits that can result in a variety of different eye colors as well. So when we're looking at something like this, and say this could be potentially skin color, in this parental generation you might have an individual with all different genes for very light skin color, and this particular individual has all different traits for a very dark skin color. So in their F1 generation, when you cross these individuals, they might have sort of a medium skin color. If you cross two of these individuals, now the potential offspring you can see could potentially be a whole rainbow of different colors. You might have a child who's very, very dark skinned, you might have a child who's very, very light skinned. Most likely they're going to be somewhere in between, as you can see here, but anywhere within this bell curve is entirely possible. So when you're trying to figure out all the different genotypes that might be produced, all the different phenotypes that might be produced, there's some simple mathematical rules that you can follow. So if you're looking at, say, one different gene pair, you can form two different potential gametes. You can have 3 different potential genotypes, but maybe only 2 potential different phenotypes. So let's go through an example. Say you have capital A, lowercase a. Okay, so let's be the 2 different types of gametes you can produce. In terms of the number of different genotypes produced, you can have an individual who is homozygous dominant, you could have an individual that was heterozygous, or you can have an individual that was homozygous recessive. In terms of the number of different phenotypes, though, produced, you'd only expect 2. You would expect the dominant phenotype, and you'd expect the recessive phenotype. 3/4 of them would have the dominant phenotype, 1/4 of them would have the recessive phenotype. But you can follow the simple mathematical rule for any number of different gene pairs. So say you're talking about 4 traits, okay? There would be 16 different possible gametes, 81 different possible types of genotypes, 16 different number of phenotypes possible. Do an example with this, just following this simple rule here. If you had 5 heterozygous gene pairs, how many different types of genotypes could you produce? So we're looking here. How many different phenotypes could you produce? Okay, and the answer is you just simply would fit follow the mathematical rule. In terms of the number of different genotypes, it's 3 to the n. In this case, it's 3 to the 5th, or multiply 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and that is 243. In terms of how many different phenotypes, it's 2 to the n, or 2 to the 5th, so you would have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and that would be 32 different phenotypes.